Welcome to ScaryTale, where ordinary places become terrifying memories. Tonight, we take you into a quiet Utah neighborhood where a single home hid an unthinkable truth. No crime scene tape, no warning signs, just a notebook on a counter, and 5 lives gone without explanation. This is the story of a family that vanished by choice, and the apocalypse they feared more than death.
In a quiet Utah suburb, nestled between rows of maple trees and trimmed lawns, stood a 2-story home that from the outside looked like any other. It was the kind of place where porch lights glowed warmly at night and neighbors waved without needing names. But in September 2014, that image shattered when a teenage boy walked through his front door and into silence. No one greeted him, no sound of dinner being made, no flicker of television, just stillness, the kind that presses down on you like a heavy coat. He moved through the house calling out names: Mom, Dad, his younger brothers and sister. The rooms answered back with nothing but echo. Then, upstairs, the door to one of the bedrooms creaked open, and the truth stood still in the air. His parents were dead. So were 3 of his siblings. Lifeless. Together. No sign of a break-in, no struggle, just gone. He ran for help, and soon sirens flooded the neighborhood. Police arrived, trying to piece together a story that had no beginning, no reason, no logic, and in the middle of it all, a surviving son staring at the wreckage of his world. Inside the home, investigators found a notebook, but not the kind you'd expect. There was no suicide note, no last words of sorrow or regret. Instead, they found a to-do list. Feed the pets. Cancel mail deliveries. Ask someone to watch the house. Farnson. The pages read like someone preparing to go on vacation, not a family teetering on the edge of annihilation. There was nothing in the home to explain what happened. No pills, no injuries from the outside, just 5 people gone, and a surviving boy left with more questions than answers. For months, detectives searched for a motive, any crack in the family's seemingly ordinary life. They looked into finances, nothing strange, no legal trouble, no history of abuse. Friends described the parents, Benjamin and Christy Strack, as quiet, caring, maybe a little eccentric, but harmless. Until they dug deeper. That's when they found the letters. Letters addressed to a man named Dan Lafferty. To most of the world, that name would ring no bells. But to anyone who followed Utah's darkest criminal history, it was unforgettable. Dan Lafferty had been convicted in 1984 of the brutal murders of his sister-in-law and her infant daughter. The story was steeped in delusion. His brother claimed divine visions, and Dan followed. They believed they were doing God's will. It was a crime that horrified the nation and inspired the best-selling book, Under the Banner of Heaven. But for Christy Strack, Dan Lafferty wasn't just a name in a book. He was a friend. Investigators discovered that Christy had been writing to Dan Lafferty in prison for years. She and Benjamin had even visited him behind bars. The tone of the letters was reverent, curious, at times disturbingly affectionate. Soon a portrait began to form, one more horrifying than anyone expected. Christy and Benjamin had become increasingly obsessed with apocalyptic fears. Friends recalled them talking about the evil in the world and the desire to go off the grid. At first, it sounded like typical doomsday prepper talk, stockpiling food, talking about solar flares or economic collapse. But the more investigators read, the darker it became. This wasn't about survival. This was about escape. Escape from the world, from its corruption, from its sins. They believed the end was coming and that they needed to protect their children in the only way they knew how, by taking them out of the world before it could get worse. Authorities believe that the couple made a pact. They drugged their children slowly over time, using a mix of cold medications and sedatives. There were no signs of struggle. The kids just never woke up. Then, Benjamin and Christy took their own lives side by side, leaving behind a notebook that spoke of routines, not death. A quiet exit, as if they were simply going away for a while, not vanishing forever. What haunts most is the lack of answers. There was no final confession, no video, no journal entry explaining the plan, only a series of letters to a murderer and a belief so twisted by fear that it became lethal. The surviving son? He wasn't home that night. Police believe that was intentional. Maybe they wanted him to carry on, or maybe he simply wasn't part of the plan. He never spoke much about it publicly. Who could? The house was eventually emptied. The grass grew long. The porch light, once warm and inviting, burned out. But neighbors say that sometimes, when the wind moves just right, they hear a faint creak from the stairs and the screen door tapping in place, as if the house is still waiting for someone to come home.
What makes a parent turn their love into fear, and then into death? Sometimes, evil doesn't wear a mask. It wears conviction. If this story chilled you, subscribe to ScaryTale. And remember, some exits aren't planned, they're rehearsed.